Hi, this is Junaid again with another video in the series Machine Learning in Healthcare, a primer for physicians, principles of machine learning in healthcare. Here I will outline what are the different principles that we need to adhere to for machine learning and AI to work in healthcare. I'll bring down issues and I've come up with 6 principles to implement machine learning in an ethical fashion, reproducible fashion, and be able to be interpretable. So these are the things we're going to discuss. This is the 4th lecture in the series, and the prelude I discussed why it is important for physicians to be abreast with this new technology. Otherwise, it's going to turn into a billing engine like EHRs were and never got to its full potential. The second was the overview how machine learning and artificial intelligence is at the core of all the new technologies, genomics, artificial intelligence, and then autonomy, robotics, etc. In the technical basics, I provided an introduction of what machine learning is, supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement, etc. And now I come to principles of healthcare. The next one will be challenges and limitations, a must-hear lecture. And then eventually I'm going to go into machine learning applications from different disease processes. The first one, since I'm a physician, stroke and neuro ICU, I'll start with neurovascular, and then we'll go from there. The main goal of machine learning in healthcare is not to replace physicians, and nobody's talking about it. It's just an absurd idea. What it will do is maybe a few physicians it can replace, and I'll come to the quotations on that. Number one goal is augment physician, mainly through computer-aided detection, diagnosis, and decision support. And the second one is augment physician efficiency, be able to compare context and communicate more effectively, decreasing the workload of physicians, making them more efficient. If this efficiency is going to translate into better patient care or decrease physician burnout, we don't know. And that's where the prelude is. If you haven't watched that, please do. Will AI replace radiologists? I say the answer is no, but the radiologists who use AI will replace radiologists who don't. Very powerful example is that physicians need to understand this technology, and this is where this is literally the crux of why I'm making this whole series. And this is my code. So physicians who use AI will replace physicians who don't. And I don't think so it particularly only applies to radiologists. Neurology as a field is quite pattern-based. So is cardiology. As a matter of fact, if you look at it, multiple areas of medicine, even in subspecializations, are pattern-based. And as you could start to standardize those things, AI will really augment through clinical decision support. So when I talk about augmented intelligence, first and foremost, let's really understand what the difference is. So from a human intelligence perspective, we think about intuition, creativity, wisdom, experience, job, and language. More so empathetic language. In machine learning, they're computational based, they have higher precision, they have better facts, no recall basis is considered, especially when you're talking about a machine. It is task specific and then can mimic language. People keep saying at times that human intelligence is a marker to achieve, and I'm not sure. We have a significant recall bias. And if you actually try to do one thing on the patient intervention, let's say I gave TPA, and what if it was a bad outcome? And it can happen. There's a percentage that we know it's going to happen. But the next patient that comes in, there is a chance that I'll be more worried about giving TPA just because of my recent past experience. However, in my career, I've given, 200 TPAs, maybe more. So this bias that we all exist with has a very important evolutionary advantage. However, when you're looking at this medicine and applying it, truly machine learning does a better job. So when you complement each other, human intelligence and machine learning. That's what augmented intelligence is. And that is something that the upcoming revolution in healthcare is. So I discussed like a number of principles. I have divided them into 6. This is just something I came up with. There's no rhyme or reason. But at the end of the day, these are the major topics that you have to hit to make application implementation more robust and clinically useful. The first principle is computer-aided diagnosis. This is basically detection, selection, segmentation, diagnosis, and decision analysis. It can be applied on a multitude of platforms: EKG, CTs, MRIs, EEG, hemodynamics, anywhere that we can apply massive amounts of machine learning into massive amounts of data. This is the first and the most important application. Example, this is probably going to be my format going forward. So this is in the field of pulmonology, radiology, and oncology, predicting lung cancer risk using prior and current chest CT volumes. So if you have a nodule, and that if that nodule has grown or not grown, that comparison, and then with that prediction of possibility of lung cancer. They use the algorithm LUMS. I'm going to take a few of these algorithmic-based studies and then just expound on those lectures in that particular, journal club. So they looked at 45,000 CT scans, and they were able to come up with an area under curve of accuracy of 94.4%. That's highly accurate, automated end-to-end lung cancer screening using low-dose chest CT. Perfect example, computer-aided diagnosis. It's not going to be like, oh, if the computer says it's a cancer, it is a cancer. No, but what it's going to do is it's going to prime radiologist's brain to actually consider this a little highly. And if the radiology is unable to look at it and says it's not a cancer, it's not a cancer. But this is a perfect example from a radiology perspective. If you look at it, there's a prior and current, and then they actually compare. And when they are comparing, they can look at the output. Believe it or not, it is a lot of work just to window the screen perfectly from one scan to another, and then also make sure that the sizes are appropriate. Because if it's a little zoomed out, that small speckle could look big, and then physicians can be fooled into it. Even if they're not coming up with an accuracy, if they can just make it easier for the radiologist to window and zoom appropriately, this will save a lot of time. And again, there could be levels of computer-aided diagnosis that we can apply to. Number 2, constant improvement. It's just a redundancy, but at the end of the day, I think it's more important that I say it again. By definition, machine learning should improve. Otherwise, it's just regular statistics. There's nothing to change as compared to the logistic regression versus Bayesian naive statistics to truly machine learning based applications. So if there's no constant improvement, then what's the point? This will actually help decrease the bias somewhat. It's a really odd field. Again, if you're going to go to the next lecture, challenges and limitations, you're going to see what really truly augmented bias comes through using machine learning. The biggest reason that machine learning is going to have this impact is, again, of course, it's constantly learning. But on top of that, the underlying technologies are getting better and better. There's increasing computational power, which will increase speed. We'll have continuous recent data, which will improve accuracy, adjust algorithms, make it more faster, if need be, with a few codes of line that can be changed. And then more so, we can start capturing more and more diverse data, and that will potentially decrease bias. Again, Chad's best score was done, I think, in 2002. And I'm still using it. And I'm pretty sure things have changed. The question really is that, where is my new machine learning algorithm to predict strokes in AFib? Because we now know that lone AFib is something that we should not be treating it as similar to other kinds of AFib. It would be nice if I had an algorithm to predict it, and it does run automatically because literally Epic is collecting all that data, and the idea is that data can actually translate into wisdom that can be applied in individual patients. This is mind-blowing. Just 20 lines of code, you can detect breast cancer. And you should go. She actually publishes the code, and it's classic SVM algorithm, vector machines, spectral vector machine SVM, available from Google, completely free, AutoML. And you can just upload these images, write these 20 pieces of code, and TensorFlow can start, detecting breast cancer. This 20 line code then can generate a lot more if you start 40 and then completely hone into it. So again, it is mind-blowing to see that how little code is needed for application of this. One of the things that people keep talking about is that, well, we don't have data, or how long we have data for. Interestingly, if you look at this particular study that was published by Chen, prioritizing small amounts of recent data is more effective than large amounts of old data. So you can have the system up and running pretty quickly. As a matter of fact, if you look at the whole picture, last 4 months of data was more important than last 4 years of data. And then, as a matter of fact, there's a decaying weighted that we have to apply to make sure that the past data also represents the current system, and the weight that is applied to them is different. So the most important thing is codes are changing. Only 20 lines of code that can be improved significantly and fastly. And then secondly, more recent data is more important. So if you're thinking, oh, well, I need 20 years of data, that's not true. And this is another thing that is completely mind-blowing is deep variant, highly accurate genomics. This is a Google project based on deep learning as well. This particular algorithm had no specialized knowledge about genomics or HTS. They just took the data and threw it in there. And from the first iteration to the second iteration, as you can see, it decreased the error rate by more than 50%. So absolutely mind-blowing that, as I said, when you have a system that continuously updates itself, improves on itself, the more time you give it in real life too, and you can give it in virtual life, the results can be astounding. Real-time feedback and prediction. Now, for me to really engage into machine learning on a practical basis in a clinical situation, this is the first requirement. I need a real-time feedback, and I need real-time prediction analysis. Otherwise, if I have to sit there and cognitively look at everything, which I will anyways, the question is then why the hell machine learning application helps me? So the true application of machine learning would be real-time feedback and prediction models. For example, if you look at this study in cardiology and hemodynamics, they looked at the electronic health record using the algorithm XGBoost. They looked at 823,000 retrospective charts, accurately predicting hypertension from EHR, automated patient stratification according to hypertension risk, and improved decision-making, patient adherence to prescribed intervention. Let's look at that. So in this study, when they extracted the whole cohort from 2004, and then basically checked on the validation from 2015, and what they were able to do is, from 2013 compared, which was the training set, and then 2014 was the test set, they were able to predict patients with the risk of hypertension, developing hypertension, by the way, future, and then looking at low risk to high risk and stratifying them. Another big example is FDA clears GE's healthcare AI Triage algorithm on X-ray devices. Literally, you do the X-ray, and then they will generate a critical finding notification, and it could be on top of the radiologist's pile to read, and can potentially directly notify the physician. Like, for example, if there's a pneumothorax on a chest section, when I place the center line, I really don't, want the radiology, and then they read it, and then they look at it, and then sometimes the resident reads it, not sure, then the attending has to read it. If I get a notification, and it could be false positive, let's say 10% of the time, who cares? I still have to look at the chest X-ray. I'm not waiting for the radiology to read anyways. What a difference does it make is that when I'm going to have the 20-40 minute talk with the family and then explain what the whole situation is and then look at the chest X-ray, or I get a notification, I hold and then look at the actual chest X-ray and go from there. So again, this has major applications in real time. This is again not a moonshot, just for funsies. Mind-blowing, crazy, literally. So what you have an augmented reality microscope. So you have a microscope looking at it, which is has augmented reality with real-time artificial intelligence for cancer diagnosis. So the minute the cancer slice is given from the OR to the thing, you can actually have real-time diagnosis, or at least rapid diagnosis, with two technologies working together, augmented reality and AI. Fascinating work. Please read. Streamlined Workflow. The promise of the real-time feedback, and this is, again, if I still have to have redundant communication, mundane tasks have to be repeated, then again, what's the point? I'm already burned out from the EHR, so oh well. At this point in time, what we are really wanting is a streamlined workflow from automated documentation, automated communication, and decreasing the mundane tasks that we need to do. And then, like you have predictions right now on your keyboards, if you have used Gmail, it will literally write the email for you at this point in time. And if I'm in the EHR, if I click Tylenol, it should give me 4 options and then, etc., and then move forward with it. Looking at my past ways of prescriptions. Similarly, if I'm writing a note, it automatically shows me, cosine to PCP. It should be simple, and it should be. Unfortunately, it's been 10 years, and I don't know if it really needs artificial intelligence, but rather just better programming. But again, streamlining workflow is important. This is a fascinating example. This was done in Austin, and what they did was they strapped on the Apple Watch, and then they continued to record patient encounters, automatically transcribed it, put it into a note format, and then was able to use it on the computer, first edit it, and then go from there. Some of these technologies are going to include open notes. The current concept of open notes is that I write a note and the patients will be able to see it through their personal health records. The change will be that once the patients actually see it, and they could recommend changes on it and then say, okay, you know what, doc, I think you probably misheard me. This also produces a level of accuracy. Will there be hurt, growing pains with it? Yes, but eventually you'll see that when it is getting recorded and transcribed for you, the actual reason for doing all this was communication. And then when the patient can also test it, then when that particular note goes to his or her cardiologist or oncologist, everything will be accurate and fast. I've talked about this before, Intelligent Scribe by Project EmpowerMD. This is a Microsoft project that is going to live record the complete presentation and the medical conversation, put it into this SOAP note. And if you're going to keep going, you can actually change that. It also converts common languages like lung cancer to pulmonary. I don't know. One of the things we can think about is it converts into medical terminology, changing lung cancer to small cell lung cell carcinoma, etc. So this takes the history, the current NLP, and then bundles it into a much better output. Freely available on the platform. Interestingly, Nuance, which is one of the leaders in medical transcription, is now working with EmpowerMD from the Microsoft project, and they are joining hands to produce better, faster clinical documentation for physicians. This is truly the most important part. And if you're going to go look at the next lecture, accountability is extremely important. Not in terms of just medical liability. That's the bullshit some physicians are afraid of. It is a part of life. What I'm worried about is that how the hell were you able to get the results from this algorithm? What are the limitations of it on that particular algorithm? Is there any standardization? And is there any way that I can compare your results with X results? So unfortunately, in the AI, the biggest issue lacking is the explainability. There should be rigorous testing. There should be actionable, scalable applications of this. And then all this needs to be accountable, not just at the level of physician, because well, your program may suck and say that this is a breast cancer. I end up getting a biopsy, that end up getting a pneumothorax, that end up getting a hemothorax, and then the patient sues you because that the images were negative. However, if you go back, there's really a lot of gray area in this area. And if the machine learning recommends it, you're probably going to believe it. Again, the idea is, I don't care. I'm going to believe it and I'm not going to believe it. It's my choice. But what is important to me is for you to be able to explain to me how the hell were you able to come up with that prediction. One big example, this is computer assisted personalized sedation system. This system was supposed to administer propofol and fentanyl in patients who are going through colonoscopy. And that the whole thing was implemented, like literally it was available as a aftermarket, people were using it. And what they found out was that it significantly reduced patient satisfaction, endoscopic satisfaction. Again, at points, there were times that the sedation was too much, that the patient should have needed intubation. All this combined, this is not something that should have been implemented and then had to be pulled from the market. There was basic stuff that was missing. And again, who's accountable? Don't know. And if somebody died, is it the CAPS or the gastroenterologist, or there's no anesthesiologist? So it becomes really, really tricky. So one important example of this. Liability, as I talked to you about, and this is the liability issue that we're going to be covering. So if the AI is correct and you follow, the outcome is good, great. But the AI is correct, but physician rejects it, the patient outcome is bad, then are you liable? More so because the AI and machine learning suggested it and you didn't follow. AI is inaccurate and you reject it and the outcome was good. What are you going to get, like extra $1 million? So you get the most amount of liability, but you don't get any benefit. That's, again, not an issue. But what the idea is, I get liable more so now because the recommendations are generated. And if these recommendations are generated and I don't follow, what are the consequences? And if I do follow, what are the consequences? Again, there's a big black hole of liability moving here. We should, as all physicians, again, as I said, the whole idea behind this lecture series is physicians to organize and understand what these implications are and be able to advocate. Because if you're not going to do it, you're going to have a system may help you, may even, put you in a dire situation. But the more important thing is for you to act on it, on this knowledge, and then advocate on it. This is another big problem that I think is significant. You can quote me on this. FDA was approving machine learning algorithms as if they're breast pumps over the counter. Well, they have classified this as software as medical device. And then if you remember, there's a drug pathway and the device pathway. The drug pathway requires case control, double-blinded clinical trials from phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it will be eventually approved. The device was that it is a reasonable iteration of the prior thing, and then you can approve it. What they did was put this whole software as into the medical device camp. So you don't need any clinical studies to prove it. You just need to prove that it is quote unquote safe, and then you need to prove that it provides the niche in the market that it is providing. In short, you're not selling snake oil. A disastrous way to move forward, and I think even the devices should now have to prove their legitimacy in the first place. And some of these devices need to be compared to their medical benefits. So I think this is a huge oversight from FDA, and we should be very careful. Again, try to advocate for our patients. And one of these days, you're going to be a patient, so for yourself. However, they updated this guideline literally last month. And what they came up with 6 different guidelines and it goes through every one of them. What is a clinical decision support software? What are the medical applications, mobile applications? How do you use or incorporate off-the-shelf medical softwares, etc.? I haven't gone into it yet. It's on my reading list. It has improved some of the things, but in my opinion, at the end of the day, the core importance would have been to actually have a double-blind controlled study, like you would expect on anyone, and then go from there. But unfortunately, I don't think so that's going to happen. The last thing and the most important thing, again, is precision and dependability. Again, tomorrow's lecture is going to be very important, which is challenges and limitations. It's not cat pictures we're looking at. We're not trying to differentiate between a cat and a dog. What we're trying to differentiate is between an MRI with a bleed in it or not. There has to be low signal to noise ratio, consistent, reliable results. And these things will create the backbone of it. If these softwares are not dependable, just think of it for a second. If you have this software that doesn't recognize a bleed, and then after 2 hours, you look at the MRI and see a bleed, what are you going to do? Ever use that software? No. So proper implementation of this, it is important that it is reliable, dependable, and precise. And if there's unprecision, I need to know how unprecise. We use that all the time with confidence interval in all these studies. But I think there should be a better way and how this confidence interval is going to apply. Again, confidence intervals come from a statistical way of how confident you are that this value that you have presented is more accurate. In machine learning, it becomes a little harder. Now let's come to one of the biggest studies. This study was published in 2019. Less than 1% of diagnostic AI studies based on high quality data. They were actually able to look at 31,000 studies, of which 82 were included. External validation was done in 25 studies. So if I do a study, I need to validate it, and there are 2 ways to validate it. If it was a double-blind controlled study, then I don't need a validation unless there's another trial. However, in this situation, how am I going to validate it? I'm going to come in and say, okay, I ran this on a computer. Here's the accuracy. Believe me or don't believe me. That's the end of it. The other way would have been that this is the algorithm, and let's say I'm at Harvard. I give this to Mayo and say, can you please run it at your institute and externally validate it for me? Now, that's the key thing we're looking at. And when you externally validate it, that actually changes the whole game. As a matter of fact, there were only 14 studies that found at best deep learning algorithms were properly, So if you go back, so they were properly, these algorithms were actually told what they are, what they do, etc., and what their limitations are. And then secondly, there were only a few studies that actually truly compared it with the same data. So if I have a test data, and that test data is something that you're going to test on, but the training data, that same training data was used by the health professionals. And when you actually do those studies and say, you know what, it is as good as a radiologist, I believe that. But when you actually have a completely different training data for the computer and another training data for the radiologist, that is not fair. And that's why some of these studies are just hype. As a matter of fact, if you look at it, this particular study, you're going to see that the conclusion is that AI is better than physicians. But if you look at the undertone, 14 studies were truly done with proper methods of conducting a study, and then they found out that they were equally better than radiologists, not more better. Again, when you really do the study correctly, and we see research biases in every study, so it's nothing new, but at the end of the day, this particular reason makes it much troublesome because I really don't know how this was explained. I don't know how to compare. I don't know how to do a meta-analysis. And now you're telling me something I can't even check. So machine learning becomes a bigger problem in validating these studies. What we really need is what Stanford has done. They actually took 224,000 chest x-rays and made it public. This is all completely labeled data. Anyone can download this data, run their own machine learning algorithm, and also compare it with their algorithm, which is expert. So we need more and more of this open data where we can actually truly test our algorithm. May come up with a completely different application, but at least testing can be standardized and prioritized and available how it was tested. Now we look at the complete evolution of healthcare as we know it. There's a complete new advent in healthcare, and we're looking at hospital at home with the evolution of 5G, Internet of Things, and these machine learning algorithms acting together. A patient can actually sit at home and be more comfortable, and a nurse can be at certain hours of the day and then available PRN, and this will change the complete paradigm of care, especially for chronic disease, which are the highest cost-wise to the medical system. The second big shift is telemedicine, and I'm going to have another talk, AI-assisted telestroke. It's on the way, and you're going to really understand when telemedicine meets AI. And lastly, we're looking at completely different kind of things like telestenting, where a physician is 2,000 miles away and they can do a remote PCI. It's not fact. It's not fiction. It is a fact. A physician is sitting 2,000 miles away and stented an artery in the heart. Things are changing. When things are changing, these technologies are going to come. And more importantly, we need to understand that they're properly implemented. Shift to the care environment. The ambulatory care is about 80%. Then there's home, digital, and acute. And we're going to see the future would be 40% of it would be digital, 25% would be home, only 30% would be ambulatory. And the acute in-hospital care is going to go down from 15% all the way to 5%. Again, just wanted to make sure you understand, Advent Health has a new command center for AI. Novant has opened up an Institute of Innovation and Artificial Intelligence. And the giants, Mayo, being a giant of clinical studies, collecting data for about 15 years in a very systemic manner, has entered into a partnership with Google. And this is, again, going to bring some mind-blowing changes to healthcare. It's not just at the level of companies like Mayo and Google. Whole countries like Israel prepares to, and it has amalgamated all the different forms of EHR into one system, bringing all of that under one data center, and then going to unleash AI on it. And this is going to be interesting to see at a level of population how AI is going to help healthcare. Of course, it is that important that there's an executive order on maintaining American leadership in AI. And this is in response to China, probably a publicity stunt by Trump. At the end of the day, it is considered a national importance. And to be honest with you, this slide is, again, one of those things that are mind-blowing. This study actually goes into a GUI experience of creating an algorithm, and physicians not truly experienced in computers or algorithms or coding or anything was able to create a study, and they were able to see that, with this study, they were able to get reasonable amount of data. And this would be the first start. I mean, if I want to design a study, I can just look at the data and see if it's worth doing by just doing a GUI. And if you go through Google Cloud Platform and Google TensorFlow, it is amazing to see that. And for people who have education discounts, or like me, AI NeuroCare is an education website, there's a lot of TPU power that they give you out for free. The next one will be challenges and limitations. You don't want to miss that. Again, please visit, provide me feedback, and subscribe, and most importantly, share. Thanks.